SciByte is produced by JupiterBroadcasting.com, independent entertainment that's on demand and always thoughtful. Check us out. Hi everyone, you're listening to SciByte. It's Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly science show. And it's science for the win, and it was recorded on October 25th. My name is Chris, and you heard it right there.
My name is Heather.
Hey Heather, how you doing?
Hey.
Welcome back to SciByte.
SciByte.
It's episode 18, and it's sort of the second episode now of the new format, and the first format was received really well.
Yes, it was.
That's awesome.
I'm very pleased.
Yes, thanks everyone for your positive, kind words and comments and emails. We got a lot of emails.
Yeah, we got some emails.
Some people weren't as happy. I mean, that always happens sometimes.
Well, yeah.
But for the most part.
We're lacking some videos, so some people are a little sad on that.
Well, we're going to have those. I mentioned that at the end of last week's episode, but we're going to have those once a month.
Yeah.
So you'll get your video SciByte too.
Yeah.
We got a lot coming up this episode. You want to tell people what we're talking about?
Sure. This week, we're going to take a look at water around distant stars, baby planets, the teenage brain, vaccines, satellites, and then take a peek at what's up in the sky this week.
Oh, yeah. I guess a lot of people around here have been getting a pretty good show in the sky, so maybe talk a little about that in a little bit, huh?
Yes.
Now, we have all kinds of stuff to talk about today. So I wanted to mention, before we get all into all this stuff and get distracted by all of that we do have an email address that you can send us your feedback, and that's SciByte@JupiterBroadcasting.com. But you can also go over to the show notes for any of the episodes, and if there's something specific to that episode, there's the comment section right there. And you don't have to have like an account on our site specifically or anything like that. You can just leave a comment and let us know what you think, and then we can, I think in the future we'll probably try to read some of those at some point during the show, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot of really smart listeners, and you know what? I am not an expert at my field, let alone all the other fields of science that we'll be talking about sometime or another.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's
there's people that know more than me, and so if I get something wrong, or if there's something else you'd like to add to the mix, send us an email, make a note in the comments.
Yeah, and of course you can always watch live. We do this show Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv, and you can be like Ken from Chicago, who's stopping by to let us know that Conan has a great skit on Siri. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, Heather, what do you say we get into the news? All right, what's our first story today?
It's the news part.
Yeah.
Last week we were talking a lot about the whole planetary formations and how some of the new planets that Kepler is discovering was just breaking all our models. But this week we actually had some good news that sort of led us in positive directions for our models that, we said, it's going to happen this way or that way, or we think it happens this way, and we actually got some confirmation on that.
Oh, really?
First one of which is we saw oceans worth of water around a distant star.
You mean like floating in space?
Kind of. About 60 light years away in the northern skies, you can see a star called Eta Corvi. And they used the Spitzer infrared detector.
Oh, it's like one of those deals where they see light filter through stuff and they kind of determine what is based on how the light was changed.
Yep, and so they can use the chemical fingerprints and say, there's water ice, there's organics, there's rock, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's everything carbon and...
Oh, okay.
So it's not necessarily squirming...
It's not like tadpoles.
Anything. No, not tadpoles. But it's, showing this giant comet cloud. And we have those, people may have heard of the Oort cloud or the Kuiper belt, where a lot of our comets come from. So the way we thought that some of the latest theories about planetary formation, about where Earth gets its water, is that Saturn and Jupiter formed closer into the sun than where they are now.
Oh.
And then they sort of moved in orbit a little bit farther out. And when they did that, it disturbed a whole bunch of comets in this outer shell and threw them into the inner solar system. And some of them hit Earth, and comets are made of ice and dirt, but a lot of ice.
So potentially brought a lot of water to Earth.
Yes. And so there's theories that there's this late heavy bombardment, they call it. And it's when we believe that's when we believe that the change of Jupiter and Saturn brought all these Kuiper Belt objects in and deposited possibly all the water in our oceans and in our sky and in our snow.
Do they also think that maybe some organic materials were brought along? I mean, it must be, right?
Well, yeah, of course. There's theories that say that too.
Interesting.
Like,
okay.
I mean, down to Battlestar, life here began out there.
Right. And so
there's all sorts of different theories.
They're seeing, so what's the difference here? So water out in space isn't that unusual because it sounds like that's how water got on Earth.
Yes. But it's this, well, yeah, it's out there. But it was a question of, did it form like with the rock of Earth, or did it all get deposited by comets?
I see.
So it's like, when did it come into the mix?
Right. And this kind of gives them some clues to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, they can tell that it's cold water vapor versus, steam, because water has different spin. The hydrogen of the water has different spins, orientations, depending on what temperature it actually forms under.
Is it actually possible that it wouldn't just be frozen when it's in space? Is there some reason why it would still be in a defrosted form? Is it like close enough to a star where it's hot or something?
Well, it could be. I mean, there could be, perturbations or, even the cores of Jupiter's moons are molten and there's lava flowing, not because the sun keeps it warm, but because the gravitation of Jupiter is, needing the moon constantly and keeping it warm.
Right. The friction and whatnot.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that it could happen. It's just, this is one thing where we say, there is enough water around that star to fill several thousand Earth oceans.
Wow.
It's a comet cloud full of ice. It's just in the right place to hit upon any planets that are there.
Oh, yeah, sure, right? Just coming to look for just the perfect planet to crash into.
Yeah.
I see. So that's a pretty good, that kind of backs up that theory then that might have been what happened here at Earth.
Yep. Crash Bandicoot from the chat room is talking about there is a correlation between pressure and temperature and vacuum and frozen. But you can tell, but it's not just that, it's what temperature it forms. So in space, it is, I'll correct myself if I wasn't clear, it is going to be ice most likely.
Yeah, okay.
But what temperature did the molecule form at?
That's what's fascinating. So, I mean, can we just reflect on that for a second? You're telling me, what's this thing like? How far away is this incredible thing that we're looking at through?
60 light years.
Okay, something from 60 light years away. And I heard today that at our current propulsion technology, to travel 2 light years, it would take us 10,000 years. Okay, so we're looking at something that's 60 light years away.
Yeah.
And we're able, by looking at it with these types of telescopes, tell how the water froze and at what temperature?
Roughly, whether it formed at cold temperatures or hot temperatures, because the hydrogen spins in 2 different ways, and you can check out the ratio of these different types of water formations to say, oh, this water formed at, below this temperature or above that temperature.
Wow, that's some real Star Trek stuff there. That's what that is. That's like long-range sensors scanning the system and detecting life. I mean, it's like the kind of analysis they're able to do just by knowing how the things become, how different objects in the universe are constructed. They're able to reverse engineer so much.
Yeah, and on top of that, the star is of approximately the right age, where we think, we know by our models, we think we know how old was our star when Earth got bombarded by comets. And this star is at the right age.
Oh.
We thought it would happen at 1 billion years old for our star, and this Eta Corvi is about 1 billion years old. So it would put it in the right time frame for this comet storm that we think happened on Earth at the same, age of the star.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's got to be interesting to look out there and see things that seem like they really reflect in our setup. Now, is there any other any other thoughts on this story? You want to talk about this other theory? It's kind of clicks in right nicely with this one.
Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
So I guess we're actually able now, which sounds amazing, to observe what is really like a baby planet, like an infant planet that's growing up, right? We're able to see that now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is the first direct image of a planet in the process of forming around a star. It is the youngest planet ever to be seen. It's 5 times younger than the previous, record holder for youngest planet ever pictured. It is I mean, if you look at the pictures that are in the show notes or, follow the links, they're able to look at this. And just the ability to look at a planet around another star is amazing. Because the star is so bright that it drowns out something else.
It just blasts it out.
Yeah, it just blasts out all the CCD camera imaging.
But I often hear that the way they find things is by seeing it pass in front of a star, right? Isn't that what we hear quite a bit?
Yes, you can see things like that. But then you're just seeing the shadow.
Sure.
But they were able to big telescope mirrors. The bigger they got, the more difficult it became to just cast a single mirror,
right.
10 feet, 15 feet,
right.
Just perfectly smooth it, exactly the right thing. So what they started doing is making into little hexagonal segments.
Mm-hmm.
You make a whole bunch of them on a plate that each one can move individually.
Oh, cool.
You can actually correct for atmosphere. They'll shoot lasers up into the atmosphere and say, this is the kind of distortion we're having in today's weather.
Adjust them for that.
Correct the shape of the mirror itself.
Wow.
To adjust for that. Change the mirror's shape to negate out the star's light.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
So they're able to look and they saw a little blob of the planet and sort of a circle of dust coming into it, like dust, like a whirlpool coming down. I saw that and I was like, this is just crazy amazing.
And it's a big sucker too, right?
Yeah.
It's like 6 times the size of Jupiter, it says in the notes here.
Yeah, that's.
And it's hot
that's
too.
2,000 Earth masses. It's in the formation stage.
Right.
So 400 to 1,300 Fahrenheit, 200 to over 7,000 Celsius. I mean, it's in the formation stages. I mean, everything is collapsing down. And we had these 2 ideas about how planets form. They're either sort of glob together. It's like, how do they form? And so this is actually showing, it's core accretion or gravitational instability. And this is sort of, the observations of this planet is favoring the gravitational instability, which is that, so you have a large mass of gas and dust in the outer part of a disk that just sort of gets the right tweak and it all kind of clumps together. And then after it clumps together, you get additional dust and gas that circle in on it to kind of make it grow bigger.
That must take... I mean, doesn't it say here that it's 2 million years old at this part, and it's still considered a baby at 2 million years old?
The star.
Oh, the star is 2 million years old. Okay. Because that process of slowly combining together seems like that just right there would take forever long.
That part would. Once it's clumped, it'll start drawing in gas and dust and able to form a giant planet in just a couple hundred years.
And then it's super hot while it all fuses together, right? And that's kind of where this planet's at, right?
Everything's just pouring in. That's where it is right now.
Yeah, that's where it's at. Okay. And I guess... No,
it is. You're right. It is. That's what I had in the notes. 2 million years old.
So at 2 million years old, they say that's the youngest planet ever found. And it's just funny. It's like
by a factor of 5.
Yeah, 2 million years old. Factor of 5. Wow. And the numbers they deal with here are just so out there. But
the numbers in astronomy are astronomical.
I wonder, though, does it have to be that planets... I mean, do they look at this, Heather, in a way where they say planets are only formed in one way, or do they believe that it's possible that both theories could be correct? Is there some reason why that's...
both theories could be correct. I mean, it's just we're seeing that this does happen.
Sure. Okay.
We're seeing something in the process that proves that at least this way of forming a planet can work.
Right. So this sort of is proving then the gravitational instability model.
Yes, it is.
Well, that's kind of a big moment then.
Yeah, so it's like through items like these last 2 stories where we're able to say, all right, well, we know that these theories do happen. Other things can happen as well, or it can happen different ways, but we know that these do happen. We weren't completely crazy when we said this could happen.
Well, and how often on that kind of stuff do we get a chance to actually say that? So that's actually kind of a really big deal.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
The fact that we're able to directly image this kind of stuff and just see it, that we can see these things happening as we thought they probably would.
Yeah, way back.
And it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Just the fact that we could see this planet in formation
And
I just like stared at the picture for a long time when I saw it. I was like, whoa.
yeah, this is a good one. In the show notes, you have links to some artist renditions, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
There's some artist renditions. A lot of times will happen with these extrasolar planets.
And it's one of these things they can keep watching for a while, too.
Yes, they can. Now, it'll take a really long time for anything major to happen.
But, it's like we talked about last week. They can just analyze the hell out of every little bit of data that they get. And so even if it's relatively, for their lifetimes the same, that the volume of data that's there just in that static unquote image, quote unquote image, is probably invaluable, I would think.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, even on the time scales of a couple decades, we've actually seen some astronomical objects change. Where there's certain, supernovas that, blast off gas.
Right.
And looking at the images, we can say, here's the images over the last 15 years. Do, do, do,
right.
do, do. You can actually see the bubble of gas expanding and how it's moving and the speed at which it's moving.
Right.
So it's just slight, but you can still, we're still getting to...
Well, and you can validate modeling with some of that.
You can validate your modeling. Just locating objects that you can watch, just that we know that this planet is in this specific spot.
Right.
Now we can start watching it.
Yeah.
It may take decades or 100 years or whatever to get, more detail.
And even now that they know where it's at, now future astronomers that are going through education coming up, they'll be able to say, yeah, go here. You can actually see this particular phenomenon in process when you go look at it in the sky.
Yeah.
So it's cool just for that purpose, too.
Yeah. I mean, right now it takes, a really sophisticated telescope, that can meld its mirror just right.
They got to come up with a better name, though. LKCA 15. That's not so. Yeah, that's not LKCA 15 doesn't really doesn't stick.
Poor astronomy stuff has very strict rules about what things are allowed to name. In order to get like a real name.
Last week they had the Tatooine for the for that planet they found. So
some things get unofficial names, sort of fast tracked.
Like Pluto and the label of planet.
Well.
Hey, do you want to move on to this IQ thing? Or do you want to cover anything else in that story? Well, okay, let's talk about this. Because I actually thought I don't know, maybe this is what, I think this is what I was trained. I thought IQ was a fixed thing. I thought once you had an IQ, that's what your IQ was forever.
That's what they, we grew up and they told us, you're tested when you go into school and that decides what classes you take K through 12 and decides how everything treats you in life. But maybe not.
Wow. Tell me about this.
Yeah, there was, it's IQ, the standard measure for the intelligence capacity of people. Takes in a wide range of stuff. And they think, they've considered it to be stable across your whole lifetime. There's verbal. So researchers took 33 normal kids between 12 and 16. Then 4 years later, they brought him back and said, hey, come back and do this test again. What they did was they did an IQ test. And they did it with functional MRI, which measures the blood flow in the brain.
Uh-huh. So
they're able to take verbal IQ, measuring language, arithmetic, knowledge, just general knowledge, memory, and nonverbal, solving visual puzzles. And they're able to give them, these tests and see how they scored on the test and see what the blood flow in their brain was doing, kind of give them the density of the gray matter in different parts of their brain and what was firing when. And so they did this and, they did it and then they brought them back 4 years later. They invited them back. Now, overall, the average was about the same. It only changed about a point.
1 point up, actually, as a matter of fact, right?
1 point up.
Yeah.
But that's like the total average of everyone. A third of them had meaningful changes in IQ. A handful jumped or plunged in IQ over the course of 4 years. As much as 18 to 21 points.
Whoa, that's a lot, right?
Yeah, it can bring you from above average to normal or from below average to average. I mean, it changes, what chunk of society you're considered to be in.
Wow. How does that happen? I mean, wow.
Now, they thought that, maybe it's just, a difference in concentration levels or,
sure.
how good you're doing today.
Yeah, you had an off day or something. That's what I would attribute it to, is an off day.
But the MRI scans themselves showed that there was an actual change in the brain's gray matter, which made up the nerve cells.
Oh, so they actually could tell a difference in the scan.
Yeah, so it from what I could read, it kind of indicated that it was more like muscle use it or lose it. You know, that there's a possibility that, you know, the people who were using different parts of their brain were keeping it fresh or sharp, or keeping, you know, the blood flow to that part of your brain high. And if you know, never used certain parts of your brain, or you didn't use them very often, maybe you never do these kind of puzzles, or you don't speak in this kind of a situation a lot, then does the blood flow decrease? Do the neurons not fire as much?
Wow.
You know, the gray matter in that part of your brain not actually as dense?
Last week, I read a study, and I should have saved the link because it was kind of interesting, actually. And it was actually a pretty well-respected study. I don't remember the details, so I'm sorry for being that guy. But it said that they did studying on people who meditated over, like a large period of their life, and had this like before and after study thing that they did, and they said that it was almost what they called it was like chemical tracks and wires in the brain. And the ones you use are the ones that kind of get like the most efficient, and the ones that you don't use don't. And they said the people that meditated sort of normalized and everything was efficient. I'm butchering it, but so it's kind of along these lines though, where it was sort of like a use it or lose it, but only kind of a different take on it.
Yeah.
So there could be some almost like a muscle, huh? That's kind of what they're saying. Think of it as.
Yeah, well, I mean, the brain is a really mysterious thing still. I mean, it's weird, crazy, and mysterious for me.
Yeah.
But even for the people who study it,
you know how you know the brain is crazy and mysterious? Because it refers to itself as the brain. Right? That's my brain saying the brain, and now it's saying it in the third person again and again. I mean, it's
your brain speaks of itself in the third person.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the royal third person, I guess.
So let that simmer on your brain for a second.
Oh gosh.
You have any other thoughts on that one?
It's just really interesting, you know. It's one of these things where if you're young and you've been, you know, put into a certain category, you know, you're told, you can't take these classes, they're too hard for you. And you really don't think like they would be. Like maybe if you pushed yourself, so you get B's. That's what I did. You know, they shuffled me to a different grade set. You know, and they're like, oh, well, she's an AB student. She's fine where she is. She couldn't handle anything tougher. And my mom's like, no, that's because she doesn't do anything. She finishes her homework before she gets off the bus.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, I'm putting you into the hard class, and you're going to try hard.
Right.
You're going to work for your B's, and you're going to be happy with your B's.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so don't write yourself off. That's kind of what I took away.
Maybe you can reprogram your brain. It's just like lifting weights.
Yeah.
Just go work out.
Do it, push yourself as often as you can. You know, don't fry your brain.
Right.
You don't want like midterm brain or report brain all the time, but do different stuff.
Probably like when you actually exercise, aren't you supposed to, I'm not Mr. Exercise, but aren't you like supposed to do a sort of a rotational pattern where you work out certain areas of your body one day and then those areas take a break and you work out another area another day? Isn't that something some people do?
And there's, some crazy workout things. I'm not Mrs. Exercise either. That, you do crazy unexpected things.
Right.
It's like a different thing every day, so your muscles don't know what they're doing.
I've also heard studies that video gamers have very fast reflexes and things like that. So maybe...
Yes. Visual, 3D.
Maybe all you have to do is play some video games. Maybe that keeps the old brain wired. I bet you know what?
Different types of video games.
Yeah, okay. You know what? That's what you do. That's what you come up with a good game. That's why you have RPGs, first-person shooters, MMOs, all these. It helps. It's an exercise regime.
Yeah.
All right. You have any other thoughts on this story?
Great.
Should we move on?
Sure.
Oh, you know what? That jingle reminds me, Heather, that we have a little announcement here on SciByte. That's the special announcement jingle. Do you like that? It's kind of low key. Yeah. Well, so guess what? This is kind of for me personally. This is big news. The week after this episode, it comes out tomorrow. So next week is my last week doing contract work, hopefully, if everything goes as planned. And I'll be full-time Jupiter Broadcasting.
Wow.
I know, right? That's really exciting. So, along with that comes sponsorships. So,
Yes.
hopefully they won't be too bad. They won't be too obnoxious because we're only going to pick ones that seem to fit and are right. And this week, I wanted to start with Audible.com because I have been a forever Audible.com user. Like, love Audible. And they have amazing mobile apps. Audible was a little late to that, so I waited. And when they came out with their Android app, oh boy, I love this thing. It gives you stats and all kinds of stuff. But here's why I wanted to tell it to the SciByte audience. Because A, it's got some great content on there. And there's B, some amazing little offers we have for you that will give it to you for free. So check this out. The one I want to recommend this week is Ready Player One.
And entertainment vid feeds.
It's read by Will Wheaton.
Was my own channel.
Oh, wow.
Parzival
How great is that?
TV. Broadcasting obscure, eclectic crap. 24/7,
Hey, Chris?
360.
Yeah.
Why am I visualing an ugly orange sweater?
You know, this book, so I'll tell you, I'll sell it to you here in a little bit in one quick pitch. And I just took this right from a comment in here because it's so great. But it is like one of the best books I've read in years. This book is like a mishmash of different genres. It's part of a treasure hunt where everyone exists in this massive MMO because life sucks so bad in the future because the economy has collapsed. And this is like I think 40 years in the future. And so there's a treasure hunt going on in this worldwide MMO. But the guy that created the MMO is like this 80s lover. So everything has all these jokes and references to the 80s constantly in it throughout it. And so it's like this awesome, like, over and over inside 80s jokes. So if you know 80s references, it's great like that. And if you're an MMO
The
player...
chat room is saying that Will Wheaton, as a person, is in the book, so he's referring to himself in the...
I guess so. I'm halfway through the book and I just absolutely love it. Now, so we have a link in the show notes, and if you sign up, we actually get a little kickback from Audible, which is awesome. And you can either buy the book just outright, which we get a kickback from, or you can sign up for one of their Audible plans. I have the Audible Gold plans where I get 2 books a month. And that's where we get the most kickback from, is that one. But you know, the other book they have, and I'll go ahead and I'll put a link to it in the show notes too, and it's probably not the number one on the top of most of our listeners because I figure they probably already have it, and if they don't have it, they don't want it. But the Steve Jobs biography book is also an Audible.
He would make a good subject.
And it's a great read.
His persistence baffled me. He was known to guard his privacy, and I had no reason to believe that he'd ever read.
Anyways, they have a sale on that one right now, so you can actually pick it up if you just want to buy the book and don't want to get an Audible subscription. They have like a Halloween sale right now, so it's actually not a bad time to grab that because you get it for cheaper than you normally would. So that's not bad. All right, well, so links to all that in the show notes. Now, for us to get credit for that stuff, you got to go use the link in the show notes. And if you like high-quality audio content, and I think you do since you listen to us, then I think you guys will really like Ready Player One. Will Wheaton has a great time reading it, and it is an awesome, awesome book. Yeah?
I remember a time where I could have used an audiobook.
Yeah, there you go.
I read a lot walking and walked right into a ladder once.
Are you serious? You were reading while walking?
I was reading while walking. I was walking to the grocery store, and somebody had a ladder sticking out the back of their truck. So I was looking down, and I can see around my book, so I'm not going to get run over by a car. But it was just out of my range of vision, and wham! Into my forehead goes the ladder, and of course it vibrates. And so, everyone within 200 feet in the parking lot stops and turns and looks at me.
Yeah.
And I'm holding my head. I'm I'm okay.
Oh, God. That is super embarrassing.
Stumbled 2 steps away. I'm okay, I'm going to hide behind this truck now.
No, you got to get the audiobook. You got to go the audiobook route. It's actually really great. At first, for the first 5 minutes, it's weird. It's kind of weird for the first 5 minutes. And then after that, it's amazing, especially when they have a good author. And it's it's a really good way to go. All right, well, let's move on.
Okay.
And get on to the SciByte News Bite. What do you got for us first, Heather?
All right. The first wide-scale malaria vaccine is showing some promise.
Okay, all right. What do you got?
So it's the first vaccine for malaria to undergo wide-scale testing. It shows that youngsters who got it were about half as likely to come down with the disease over a 14-month follow-up.
Only half?
They were half as likely.
Half as likely when you have the vaccine. That surprised me. I would think it would be more like 80% less likely if you have the vaccine.
And it's still one of the best ones out there. From what the article that I was reading from what I could tell, it's not perfect, but it reduced cases of the severity, it reduced hospitalization.
Right,
So
right. So even those who got sick might have had it less as bad. They might have gotten, it might have helped them recover a little quicker.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so widespread in certain parts of the world that even reducing by half.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that's significant.
That's amazing.
If you can, reduce the severity of it, even in a quarter, any significant percentage, it's, hey, take it and then see what else you can do with it.
Especially, if you build on that progress, that's really where it would make a difference.
Yeah.
That's got to be the trick, though, to get people to keep taking it. Now, I wanted to ask you, because you work in a field that has, you work a lot with research, right? And you probably have, I would assume, a lot of grant funding, things that you deal with, right?
We do. We have small business contracts.
So now, this study that ScienceNews.com talks about, the study was funded by the people who make the vaccine. Now, but that's not too uncommon. And I wanted to get what your take was on it. Does that make it less trustworthy? As a consumer, I look at that and think, well, isn't it in their best interest to find something positive? Or is there laws in place or something that prevents them from being biased here?
Anything medical on actual humans, especially kids, really strict.
Okay. So so despite who funds it,
we had there's exercise equipment in space, and so we wrote a proposal and we're like, hey, we've got this idea for this cool little piece of equipment, and I think we wrote about, hey, we'll try it out to see if it works for because we've got me at 5'2" and we had people that were 6'10", 6'11". So we're like, hey, we've got a variety of heights. We can just, check it out. And they're like, yeah, that's human testing. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a lot of really strict rules about what you can or cannot do.
It just makes it gives you a red light. But I think that's based on I don't want to say ignorance, but
skepticism.
Yeah.
It's good skepticism, especially when you've always got to have a certain level of skepticism when your study is trying to sell more of your work. It
was like when Microsoft would do a study showing that Linux was more insecure than Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it always seemed like. Those are always so obviously skewed, I always thought. That's a part of what it is, too, is in the tech industry that I follow so closely. Whenever the tech company does some sort of study, it's always undoubtedly skewed in their favor in such a way that it's almost kind of laughable that they think anybody's going to buy it.
I think there are different rules.
I would assume, right?
If I do a test and I have to release my results, I don't have to tell you what temperature I had my reactor at. I don't have to tell you the exact composition of the catalyst inside it.
Right.
For medical stuff, they may not have to have the exact composition of everything inside it, but I guess I'd like to think they'd have stricter rules about how they report things.
Yeah, sure.
Anything positive gives me hope. I'm like, well, it'd be nice if it actually
can be, if it's something that, if it has a level of success rate and there doesn't seem to be any side effect of it, then, like you were saying earlier, even if maybe this is skewed a little bit, so it's a little bit more, or it's a fair bit more positive than it should be. Even if it was actually more like 30% success, that's still really pretty important.
Now, Office Angela in the chat room says, she's worried that there won't be long-term studies before it's put into production. Now, you do run into that in medical science, I think. Now, I'm not in that field.
Right.
So I don't know a lot of the rules and the exact.
Yeah.
But anything that shows promise, I think, in something significant, I think gets fast-tracked maybe a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like it usually is, yeah.
They're like, well,
they almost like do a trade-off, it seems like. They're like, well, the chances that it's going to be bad are less than we know the damage malaria is doing.
Yeah, we can keep some people alive longer. We may have to deal with other side effects later, but we'll deal with them when we get there.
I think that might be what it is. And then, I don't know. My dad had a flu shot. he was working. It's kind of gross, Heather. My dad was working for one of the cities around here, and they had to send him out to the sewer treatment plant, which is a pretty sophisticated sewer treatment plant. So, I mean, you know, it has that going for it. But it's, boy. So anyways, they said, well, Mr. Fisher, before we go in there, you need to get a flu shot. And he said, okay. You know, I haven't got one before, but no problem. And he went in, got the flu shot after work. He left work, got out of the office like at 3 o'clock. It was great. Came home. Said he had a headache around dinner, and then that was probably about 5:30. By about 7 o'clock, he was totally locked, like he had full body arthritis.
Whoa!
He couldn't move, and he was in horrible pain. If you try, like when he would have to be moved, you know, because like he literally was totally locked. It hurt him a lot, and so we had to get him into the hospital, and they had to put him on all kinds of crazy stuff, and he was totally locked up for like 24 hours. He couldn't move. And then he slowly, over the next couple of days, regained some basic function. Like he couldn't move his hands and stuff, so like he couldn't feed himself. And then by the end of a week, he was like at 70% mobile again. And then it took him about the rest of the month to get back to 100%.
Wow.
And he ended up getting the flu anyways. So, but you know,
well, the flu shot itself, they kind of guess months ahead of time. They're like, we think it's going to be these couple of strands.
And there's a chance you're gonna, you know, I mean, who knows, right? Who knows how he got that or what? And they say there's it's like a body. There's a very small percentage, is what they told him. A very small percentage have some sort of allergic reaction that triggers like some sort of form of arthritis. It was actually legitimately a form of arthritis that he had for that period of time, for that month, basically. Oh. Pretty wild. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, on the flip side is I think he's gotten flu shots since then.
I
think so. I think he's
My
had
mom
to get
gets them. She works in a school, so she gets them every year.
Yeah, I've gotten them a few times.
She's gotten the flu before too, but
I got swine flu when I went to PAX.
My mom did. My mom had swine flu and bronchitis at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was down.
Yeah,
I'm like calling her. I'm like, I could hear a little zombie voice on the other end of the phone. I'm like, it's okay, Mom, don't talk. I'll just talk to you for a minute, and then you go back to sleep.
I was taking ice baths. I had a really bad fever, and I got it at frickin' PAX. You know, I got the con crud at PAX, and it was swine flu. And I had clients at the time that were medical hospitals. So once they found out I had swine flu, they wouldn't let me on.
Cut off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it was right. I was so glad to have, just the basics at home, like some food and just to help. And I think our son Dylan had just been born, and I didn't know if I could give them swine flu. I didn't want to give my wife Angela or our newborn swine flu.
No.
So we quarantined me to like the downstairs of the house. And they stayed upstairs, and then we would, risk it from time to time when I needed something and I couldn't take care of myself for whatever reason. What a mess.
Drop cloth.
Yeah. Or
stapled to the ceiling, and she put a little table, puts things into the table. All right, you can open your door now.
You know what's always great, though, when I'm sick like that, is I watch Star Trek episodes that I wouldn't normally watch, like Deanna Troi episodes or Barclay episodes.
Push play.
Yeah, you just push play and just sit
then sleep and nap.
Yeah. Oh, Angela reminds me that Dylan's about 5 months old. Speaking of sci-fi entertainment, you want to give a mention here for it's kind of a SciByte Halloween pick here, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
This is really cool. Now, everybody knows about War of the Worlds probably in some form. I mean,
yeah.
Everybody's probably seen the Tom Cruise movie in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But it all really started with a radio drama back in October 30th, 1938. Yeah.
Yes.
And I want to play a clip of it because bear in mind, 1938, radio was still pretty new. And what they would do, there was no TV. So what people would do is at home, they would tune in like at dinner time to their local radio station, and it would play sort of like a variety show with music and, different guests on there and things like that. So picture, jazz music is playing. And so what they did is they had the program started. They started doing like a normal day's broadcast, playing jazz music, and then they broke in with news reports. And it really scared people. Take a listen.
We are ready now to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carl Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl Phillips speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling.
Listen how official that sounds, doesn't it?
I know.
So people maybe dismissing it and, we're just in passing or something, tuning in, thinking all of a sudden they're listening to some sort of official actual radio broadcast about some sort of invasion.
Yeah, that was part of it. There was everyone's heard, or many people have heard about, the panic but there was an introduction at the beginning of it, saying, hey, this is a novel, this is, the adaptation, the novel already written.
Oh, sure, but you had to tune in and catch that.
But you had to turn and catch it. And this was on, the show itself was airing on sort of a less popular radio channel. There was a much more popular program on another station that had a comedy skit. And so for the first, so everyone dialed into that, listened to the first 15 minutes of a comedy skit.
Oh, I see.
And then started, essentially channel surfing of 1938, rolling through the radio.
Right.
And heard this.
Wow.
And
at
they
this point,
broke it in. It was the exact kind of break in where it's like, this just in, where actual news was coming in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There was world wars going on. There was stuff in Europe, war and various things going on. So people were used to hearing about crazy stuff going down, and they broke in at exactly the same way.
Yep. And that's kind of what we've played there. Is they just with the clip, what I clipped right around was there was some jazz music that was just playing. They were just playing they started jazz music, and then they after they introduced what it was, and then a little bit later they break into the jazz music and they say, coming up in a few we have some breaking news and we're gonna go to our on the scene reporter. And then they go back to jazz music. And then that's when they break in again with that. Now here, we send you over here. And he tells them, we're being invaded.
Yeah.
We're being invaded by Martians.
Yep.
And people just went to the streets. They really had they had one hell of a Halloween Eve. This was October 30th, too, which is what's crazy.
Now, it's some of the amount of freak out.
Was it overplayed?
It's kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
It might be overplayed. Newspapers published over 12,000 articles within a month.
Whoa.
About it.
Whoa. They were sort of playing it up, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, they were really concerned that radio, this new thing, was going to render them completely obsolete. That radio was going to take them out. So they may have taken the opportunity to sort of go look at the evils of radio.
Ah.
Now, it's because it was so long ago, and some of it's hard to see. Some of it's hard to exactly nail down what happened and when it happened. There were police that were swamped with calls, and mostly it was people calling authorities going, should I hide in my basement?
Didn't it was right here in my state. Didn't they lose power, and that caused people to really freak out, though?
Yeah, that was really the only place where there was really freak out. Was there happened to be a big substation go out in Washington.
Bad timing.
And it was just right at it was coincident in the story at the perfectly wrong time. It's you're watching a horror movie, the music's welling, the monster's about to jump out, and the lights black out. Boom.
Yep.
It wasn't the best timing for a coincidental blackout.
Yeah.
So those people, gotta give them a little bit of leeway.
Now, I mentioned earlier that this movie had sort of spawned a bunch of different incarnations of it.
Yeah.
I had somehow originally heard this in its audio form, one of the clips I just played there.
Uh-huh.
This, talking about audiobooks just a few minutes ago, this is really very, very, very well done. The announcers sound legitimate. The people, they go to the streets, and it sounds, it's so visual, it's so well done that you can picture it so well in your mind that when I later saw the old 1950s version of War of the Worlds,
you're still that's not how you're supposed to look.
Well, sometimes I've already seen this scene. And then I would realize that, no, I'd only pictured it from the radio broadcast.
From the radio.
That's how visual it is.
Radio at that time had to be incredibly descriptive. They had little booths, and they had all sorts of stuff to bang and, make sounds with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had quite a crew.
That's what it was.
Yeah. They had quite a crew back then. Do you have any other thoughts on this one?
One interesting that I found out was that in 1949, a Spanish language version was done in Ecuador.
Oh, really?
And that actually set off panics and riots.
Oh, really? Again?
Police, fire brigades rushed out like
real ones, like serious ones.
Yeah, I mean, bad stuff happened.
That is crazy.
It's like, I was like, whoa, it was, because they always hype it in America, and they're like, no, it wasn't really all that big.
Well, so there is a prevalent conspiracy theory on the internet, and I'm sure before the internet, obviously, that this was a CIA psyops operation to see if they could disrupt a population before an attack. And so the idea would be that they would play this radio, freak everybody out, and then invade when that was happening. That's the theory. I don't remember.
Huh. Now I know I've read somewhere.
I should look it up. I don't remember why they think that.
That Hitler heard about, read all the radio articles, and he sort of poked fun, like, "Oh, look at all you crazy Americans."
Right. Yeah. No, there were, or it was Russia, or somebody did make fun of us. Yeah. Here, stand by, Mars. You know what? I'm accessing the SciByte computer here to pull this up. Let's see what oh yeah, here we go. War of the Worlds conspiracy.
Oh.
Yeah, here I'll link it up. You know what? I'll put it in the show notes if you guys want to check it out. It looks like they think that. Yeah. Okay. I won't get into it because it's pretty long, but I'll toss a link to it in the show notes if people want to go read more about the War of the Worlds and how it might have even been a CIA psyops operation. Dun dun dun. Right?
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's do that moving on thing we do here. And we got an update in the SciByte news section, don't we?
We do. Last week I told you that there was another satellite coming down, and it did come down.
Oh yeah. Do we know where it hit?
We're pretty sure it hit in the Bay of Bengal, and it's northeastern Indian Ocean.
Oh.
We don't have any eyewitnesses, so we don't know for 100% certain, but it most likely came down Saturday night between 9:50 Eastern Daylight Savings Time, and so right around that time in the Indian Ocean. We estimate that maybe up to 30 pieces, totaling about 1.7 metric tons, came down.
Whoa, I didn't realize that thing was that heavy.
The satellite itself was 2.7 tons. Now, most of it would have burned up, but there were things like heat-resistant mirrors and ceramic parts that probably could have survived the trip by calculations. So...
Do they have to go recover this stuff?
They might go out there, but it's floating in the bottom of the ocean. They might go out there.
But now it's a fish house, is what you're saying.
Check it out. But yeah, it's fish houses now.
Okay. Well, that's interesting enough.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting to watch them try to track where it went down, to see, at first it was like, did it go down somewhere over China? We're not really sure. No reports are coming in yet. Everyone look up.
This is the second one we've had just in the last month or so, right?
Yeah, it was the second big satellite in 30 days. Now, there is generally a lot of little stuff coming down. Just on a regular basis that you don't really know about.
Oh, okay. So this is more of one of the bigger ones. That's why we took note.
Yeah, it's just one of the bigger satellites. These big technical satellites, when they come down, it's like, oh, look at that. All at once, not little chunks of stuff.
These things don't have... probably sounds like such a stupid question. But these things don't have, engines on them that they could just turn and fly away from Earth. Would it be they just would not be able to get away from our gravitational pull, and they would just fall back anyways?
They'd probably just fall back anyways. Or cause trouble at a later point in time. Even if think of all the near-Earth asteroids. It'd essentially just be another Earth-made asteroid. It's sort of following near our orbit, but it might come back and haunt us again later. And if it haunts us again later, then it's going at a lot faster rate, and more of it will survive. If it's just sort of decaying in its orbit, it's going to, burn up. Yeah, someone in the chat room brings up, and this one did die out. There was no fuel left to change its orbit, no anything left. Of course, they're always working on ways like, hey, is there a way we could go up and, pick where it comes down? The Earth is 2/3 water.
Right.
It's most likely going to come down in water. But can we pick it anyway?
Yeah.
Can we pick to be like, you know what? We're making sure it's coming down right there in the middle of the water.
Right.
Look out, fishes.
No, it's a new fish habitat. They don't mind.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, well, good. So now that means we can get more TV satellites up there, too, so people can get more high definitions on their satellite TV. Right, Mars? Is that what it means?
I think that might be what it means.
Are you ready to move on? Actually,
let us move on.
Are you ready to move back? Let's step into the SciByte time machine, Mars.
Yes.
All right, first up, we're going 231 years back, aren't we?
That is right. 1780. The first U.S. astronomy expedition to record a solar eclipse.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Look at them getting their science on 231 years ago.
Yep. 4 professors and 6 students left on a 3-week expedition. And actually, I read this, and it was kind of interesting. The U.S. is actually at war with Britain at the time. And the expedition had to cross enemy lines.
Oh.
And luckily, a British officer in charge of that area said, looked them over and decided that they were 4 professors and 6 students with a couple of telescopes. Said, fine, go land over there. We'll keep an eye on you. And so they got everything set up, and they were ready to watch. They had predicted where this total eclipse of the sun was going to happen. And unfortunately, they only got a partial eclipse.
Oh, so wait a minute. They went on this massive trek.
Crossed enemy lines.
And they got only a partial eclipse? Did they do their
math? They
math
only saw
wrong?
a thin arc of the sun instead of a complete total solar eclipse.
Wow. Were they totally bummed? They must have been.
Oh, I bet they were.
No, they're like, no, it was the journey. It's all good. It was the journey.
It was a journey. But it was the first time that this kind of thing happened. I mean, to this day, you can still go on boats and cruises where it's, a solar eclipse cruise. Because there's a lot of total solar eclipses that happen where you can only see it in the middle of the ocean. And so these cruises will go out and they'll make their trek in the middle of this, area where you can see the total solar eclipse.
Are you allowed to look at a solar eclipse? I thought it was bad for your retinas.
Well, not directly.
Oh, okay.
There's filters you can use. There's
little tricks.
Telescopes. There's the pinhole. You poke a pinhole in something and then
smoke out of it. Yeah, I know that one.
You watch where the light shines and you can see it.
Oh, different trick.
I've actually been able to see a partial solar eclipse shining through the light of a tree with leaves. There were a whole bunch of, the sun shines through in tiny little sort of freckles on the ground. And I was actually able to see little arcs of the sun.
Russip says he uses welding goggles. I bet that would work pretty good.
I imagine you could. I wouldn't say that to just anybody. There are different grades of welding goggles.
Okay. Oh, you don't want to make a science recommendation is what you're saying.
No, I'm not going to make a science recommendation and have we are audio.
Yeah, so actually.
But I don't want our listeners to be required to listen to the audio only.
That's true, because if you tune in live, you get to watch the chat room too, so you want to be able to read the chat room. Good point, Mark.
We should be able to see, not just hear.
Yeah. All right, so that was 231 years ago. What about 143 years ago?
A patent was registered for the machine to let the electrographic vote recorder.
This is on October 26, 1868. Yeah, okay.
Thomas Edison applied for his first patent.
Oh.
This was the first patent that he did. He eventually would hold over 1,500 patents, but this was the first one. It let legislators vote by turning a switch.
Wow.
Saying yes or no.
Wow. That was his first patent, huh? That's pretty...
His first patent was 143 years ago this week.
That's pretty patriotic for your first patent, I gotta say. And now we have, on November 1st, 1879, 132 years ago.
Jump forward just a little bit. We have Edison has returned, and there was light. He signed the patent application for his electric lamp.
Oh, wow, very cool.
A whole bunch of different, electric bulbs, and there are some questions as to what was happening, but he definitely patented what could be easily reproduced and mass reproduced.
Man, the time machine is speeding up because now we have drifted into next week, and we are targeting 132 years ago, November 1st, 1879. That's what I just did, isn't it? November 1st, 1884. Sorry.
Yes,
127
years ago. And we got the confusing Greenwich Mean Time.
See, I was already confused. I couldn't even read it.
I know. Well, it's because we have 24 time zones, And everyone says, what time is SciByte coming on? And it's like, well, 7:30 at Jupiter time. Use the calculations for you. And it was 127 years ago this week that they universally adopted Greenwich Mean Time and the 24 time zones.
Wow. So before that, everybody's doing their own thing, huh?
Kind of.
And then we have 117 years ago, October 28th, 1894.
A patent was issued for inserting paper into a machine and a time clock. You insert your paper in the machine, you pull the lever, and it stamps the time.
Wow. Worker drones have been punching the clock for 117 years.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, the patent was signed 117 years ago.
Now, this one actually is not too long ago. Probably everybody listening was alive October 29th,
1998.
13 years ago.
Yep. John Glenn returned to space at the age of 77, 36 years after he first orbited the Earth.
Oh, yeah.
First American to orbit the Earth, 36 years later, and, a senator seat and a couple other things later, he gets to go back to space.
How about that? Wow. Well, that was our trip looking back. You ready to look forward?
I am, and up.
Actually, people that have been in the certain parts of the U.S. this week, right? It was in the U.S. They got an amazing light show.
Yeah, anywhere in North America, Canada, northern...
Oh, yeah, I guess it is the sky,
Europe.
right?
Yeah, it is the sky, so the sky goes all around the Earth.
Mm-hmm. I was actually thinking of people like in the UK when I said that. Like, they couldn't see it, right?
Well, they may have been able to see it. I'm pretty sure they may have. It just goes down to certain latitudes.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's not just, like, based on what is facing the sun. It's just that whole area of the Earth.
Yeah,
I didn't understand. Okay.
When this is talking about the spectacular aurora that some of you may have seen. Aurora come in and they hit the Earth's magnetic field and they travel down, so they kind of spread around. It kind of goes somewhat evenly around the whole Earth. It just spreads down to lower and lower latitudes, depending on the strength of the field. And this one was one of the biggest ones in recent history.
So the strength is what determines how far down it goes, not the region it's in. Okay, I didn't understand that. That's interesting. Yeah, I've seen some pictures and some video, which of course we have in the show notes, and it looks spectacular. Now, you said that a lot of times, I think last week, that you almost don't even know when these are going to happen until like a day or so before it actually just happens, right?
Yeah, it took 2 days for it to get here. So we saw the mass ejection from the sun, and then 2 days later it was here at Earth. So you can only look forward about a day or two. So this storm is kind of in decline. So the lower latitudes might not be able to see anything from this one. But it was, apparently, I didn't get to see it myself, but apparently it had a lot of red to it, and that's fairly rare as far as aurora go. So it was pretty cool.
I heard, because last week you mentioned that people looking up on Saturday were going to be able to see Jupiter, and then I saw online people were talking about it. They were seeing it in the sky.
Yep, Jupiter is it's in opposition. It's in the brightest it's going to be for the year. It's outshining all the other stars.
Does it last like that for a month or so, or how long does it stay there?
I think it may have be at its peak either last week or this week.
Okay, so it's actually not that very long.
It's still gonna be bright for a little while. Okay. It may be pretty bright for about a month or so. I mean, it's always bright, but it's just like at its brightest.
That's what
everything's perfectly lined up. Look for it in the east as night falls. It'll arc across the sky, across the southern sky as the evening goes on.
Now, we have anything coming up for like Halloween or something like that? Anything near then? I know we have a new moon coming up this week, right?
Yep. Wednesday we're hitting new moon, which is...
the day this episode comes out.
Yep. And when it's all dark. So then it'll start... By Friday you'll actually be able to see, the thin crescent of the moon coming back. Friday evening you'll be able to see it low in the southwest. Venus will be to its lower right.
Oh, okay.
The dusk of the 28th and the 29th, about 30 minutes after sunset, look to the southwest. You'll be able to see the moon, bright red star, and that'll be Antares. And you might even get a peek at Mercury and Venus low on the horizon.
Oh, so that's Friday and Saturday.
Yes. So, later on this week, you'll be able to see Jupiter, Mercury, Venus maybe low on the horizon, see the crescent moon.
Very nice. I look forward to that. That's like my new thing now. I'm loving that in this show. Is like after this part of the show, I'm like, all right, I kind of note that down. Now when I know I'm looking out there, I know where to look. That's going to be awesome. I'll be trick-or-treating somewhere around there. I know it's coming up sometime. All I know is candy's involved.
Candy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, geez, I think we're getting close to the end of this episode. Do you have anything else, any other ground you want to cover?
Not that's coming to mind to me right now.
Man, awesome. All right, everyone. Well, email us. Let us know what you think. Have any questions? I think we should do some feedback here soon, so let us hear it.
Yep.
SciByte at JupiterBroadcasting.com. Or leave a comment anywhere you're listening to this, which would just be JupiterBroadcasting.com. Unless somehow I get a wild hair and I publish this to YouTube, but... Man, that's crazy talk there. That's crazy talk.
That's crazy.
All right, well, now, before we get out of here, there's just a couple of things we want to remind you all about, and that is that SciByte is released Wednesday mornings over at JupiterBroadcasting.com, and of course, you can also catch it live over at jblive.tv on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m., and I encourage you to go to JupiterBroadcasting.com, check out the show notes, maybe an Audible book to support the show. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right, Heather, well, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, and thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.